Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@usaprepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked, blissed? Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
I need to bathe in it today.
You need to or you have?
Well, not quite. I need to because of your dearest buddy, Bill Gates.
Interesting you mention his name. He's on my list. Yeah, please tell me what your thoughts are on Bill Gates.
I consider him the most evil person in the world. That's my...
Well, he's in the running. What about Mark Zuckerberg, the pedophile spy guy? Wants to know everything about children?
Well, I mean, that's a different kind of evil. I'm talking about a person who's out to kill everyone in the world. That's Bill Gates.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about immunizations? You're talking about population control? Tell us what you mean.
Well, all of the above plus computer crap.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, I know you had a near-death experience over the weekend, or actually your computer did.
Yep.
What was that all about?
Well, and who knows? I mean, I haven't the foggiest idea. All I know is it crashed, and Geek get me back about 10%.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well,
I wanted to mention to you something about that. So I'm sure that you get the same kind of information that I do via email. People saying, look at this, would you look at this? Got to click on this. Click on this link. Okay. Well, don't you?
Oh, of course.
Don't you?
50 times a day or more.
Yeah, and so people are so interested in making sure that I'm up to the second on whatever they think is important to them. And frankly, I'm going to just tell it like it is. Frankly, many times, unless I really know the person, I'm not going to click on it because I can't. I can't risk destroying my computer that would take me at least a whole day to get it back in shape to be on the air. I cannot risk it. So there are very few times that when people send me emails, I click on the links.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If I don't know you, in fact, the chances are I'm going to put you in junk mail.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Dr. Shealy, is there anything that you have on your list that you'd like to bring up this morning?
Nope. I'm open line Monday.
Okay. All right. So you're frosted with Bill Gates, and so am I, and I'm frosted with some others as well. And one group of people I'm very concerned about is the ones who are taking over, the ones who are next. And we'll call them the Millennials, people who have lived more than half of their lives since the year 2000. And what I've noticed, we've been talking about this for years, but let me just give you a summation, a thumbnail sketch of what I've determined. That millennials are less able to cope with life's difficulties. They're more anxious about making decisions, important decisions. They are more me first in everything they seem to do. I'm talking now, this is a generalization. This is a stereotype, something that we're not allowed to do anymore. We're not allowed to have stereotypes or make generalizations, but I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah, good on you, mate.
Well, okay. So far, Dr. Shealy, have I said anything that you think is wrong?
Of course not.
Okay. So I'd like to ask you at the end of this list of things I've observed, have you seen firsthand any of this, maybe in your clinic or in people that you've seen passing by, or mother, daughter, father, son, or parent-children relationships, in the stores, on the street, out and around? So they seem to be less able to cope with being alone. They're lonely.
Well, I'm with you all the way.
Okay. They fight more with their friends over little things. And they do the most dumb thing. So they have a really good friend, at least in their own mind, this person is their friend. Let's say it's a guy, and he has a girlfriend. But he doesn't want to be bothered with her, so he blocks her on his phone. Or she blocks him. It's like, oh, I hate him, I hate him, I hate him. But they're boyfriend and girlfriend. But for the moment, they can't stand each other, and they melt down. Both of them. They take beyond stupid risks to get that great self-image picture called a selfie of themselves leaning over some cliff, and they put themselves in risk, and sometimes they fall over and die. Literally. They fall off the cliff and die. And there's something else that's even bigger. I was looking at this parade, this gathering of people in Israel, and it was huge. It was like as big as the 1930s Olympics in Germany, where Adolf Hitler was the spokesperson, and it was the largest crowd you could ever imagine. Well, it was almost like that in Israel, and it was a homosexual event where people were proud of being homosexual. And I think that is part of this me first thing, too. I deserve to be happy, even if it's morally incorrect, even if it's wrong. I deserve to be happy, and I'm proud of it, and I'm going to go and make it known to everybody that this is the way I am, because I deserve to be happy. And then there are things that I don't see.
You're right. I have to admit, however, I have 5 grandchildren, all of whom are millennials, and they do not fit the role, thanks to their parents.
I know they don't, and I've met most of them, I believe, or at least many of them, of your grandchildren, and I have children who are millennials, and I don't see this in their mold, but I do see it in others, and way too many others. And I don't think that this is true of the millennials who are working as engineers at the network from which we're broadcasting, because they're all wonderful. I've never met them, but from what I can tell, for being on the air and with them for years, they don't melt down. So here's what I don't see, Dr. Shealy, with these young children and millennials. I don't see fathers and their children fixing the lawnmower or, changing the oil in it, or actually even mowing the lawn. I don't see the children mowing the lawn. I don't see children riding bicycles. I don't see children planting a garden with either parent or both parents. I don't see fathers coming to the aid of their child's car that is stalled on the road or has a flat tire. I don't see mothers and daughters baking bread, grinding flour, making dinner, or even washing dishes. I don't see young people coming to, when they come to visit, I don't see them saying to Mrs. Finelli, let me help you clear the table. Let me help you make dinner. Let me help you make lunch. Let me help you wash the dishes. Let me help you load the dishwasher. I don't see that. But what I do see, what I don't see is father and son projects. Getting that saw out, whether it be a hand saw or circular saw or a 2x4, or building a playhouse, or hanging a rope with a tire on it for a swing in the yard. I don't see mother-daughter projects. But I do see children with cell phones in their hands almost all the time. So that's what I don't and do see. Dr. Shealy, to me, this is manifested in children being unaccepted, unaccepting of not being first. If they're on the ball team, they don't understand why they're not first. If they are in school, they expect that they deserve to be first. And what schools have done about this, and the parents want to know, why isn't my child first, on the ball team? What schools have done is everybody gets a trophy. Everybody wins. And I think it's because the parents can't deal with it, their child not being first, and the children in school can't deal with not being first. So that's the thumbnail of what I've seen. What are your thoughts on? I know I said a lot.
Well,
but all of that.
If it continues the way it does, it'll be interesting to say this is the last generation. Because, remember, in 10 to 20 years, they won't be able to have children.
I think some of them are so selfish they don't want to have children.
Right. They'll be sterile, so they won't be able to anyway. And they won't care.
Well, it's interesting that you said they don't care. And I think that's absolutely true in many respects. They don't care. They don't care about a lot of things. They don't care about those around them. But they certainly do care about themselves. They are me first. And I use that term because I don't know what else to say. I could say egocentric. I could say self-centered. But back when I was growing up, being an egotist was considered wrong. Oh, that guy's egotistical. They didn't say me first. But, that guy is centered around himself or herself. And it was considered wrong. Just like homosexuality was considered wrong. But now, it doesn't matter. If you go in the cities, or even if you go shopping, you'll see women with pink hair. Really? Pink hair? Why? What's that all about? Well, I guess they deserve to be happy. They've got things stuck in their nose, and they want to serve food at restaurants. Really? It's disgusting. They've got things in their tongue, and they want to serve food. They scratch their face, rub their nose, pull on their ears, and they say, "What can I get? What can I get you?" Nothing. Can't get me anything. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to throw up. I don't get it. I don't get it. And how did this happen? Did it happen from that guy you mentioned, Bill Gates? Did it start with the computer where we forgot how to spell because we got word processors with spell checkers? We don't need to spell. It'll fix it for us. How many articles have we read where the wrong word is there and you go, boy, it's about the same number of letters as the word I think they meant to put in that article, but it's the wrong word. I think Bill Gates fixed that with his spell check. How about that?
Well, all I know is he has created a monster. And he is a monster, therefore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But yet he has a foundation, the Bill Gates Foundation.
Well, the Bill Gates Foundation is doing something that's equally bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about Bill Gates and what he's up to and what your thoughts are when we come back. Alex and Brad are engineering the broadcast at GCN in Minnesota today. Thank you, Brad. Thank you, Alex. Dr. Shealy and I'll be right back. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com. I know a little bit about Bill Gates. I know that he sold defective Windows products for decades.
What do you mean?
When he was at the helm.
Has he ever sold one that's not defective?
I can't think of a single one. I literally cannot.
And they get worse by the generation.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was alleged by the founder of Apple Computer, Steve Jobs, that Bill Gates stole the Apple operating system, for the Mac, and he called it Windows. Bill Gates called it Windows, and that's why it looks similar, and that's why you move the mouse around, and so Steve Jobs was livid, furious, and was screaming as I learned about it. when he called up Bill Gates and told him that he stole his operating system. He stole the Apple operating system. And the words that are used by people who have worked there, colleagues and competitors of William Henry Gates III, Bill Gates, he's arrogant, he's bullying, he's ruthless, and he's stubborn. And I know a guy who used to work at the Microsoft campus, and he was in a position where he would see Mr. Gates, daily, and he was scolded. He was scolded for saying good morning to Bill Gates when he was on his way into the office, because you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to distract Mr. Gates' attention by being nice to him. You cannot say, good morning, Mr. Gates. What a wonderful day. Can't do that, because you'll distract him. And his space, his concentration, his privacy is so important that if you work there, you will be spanked, figuratively, for breaking the big guy's concentration. So those are things that most people don't know about William Henry Gates III.
Those are the kind things.
Yes. Is there anything that you want to share about Bill Gates?
Well, he is a top member of the Committee of 300, which is the cabal, the Bilderbergs, the Trilateral Commission, truly the evil empire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And these are the guys that want to tell us what to do.
And have.
Dr. Shealy, okay. There's this new trend. It's just unbelievable to me. It's about non-beef or non-meat. We'll call them hamburgers. I don't even know what to call these things, but they kind of.
I have a word for them: junk burgers.
Oh, okay. There's a company called Beyond Meat. It's plant-based burgers. They use pea proteins and beet juice to make it look like it's bleeding. Sometimes it's GMO soy. It's engineered to look like meat and taste like meat. And currently, there are about 15% of the restaurants in the United States that serve these meatless burgers, and one is called the Impossible Burger, and it's gaining traction. It's literally gaining traction, and I don't quite understand how this could be, that if people had half a brain, they wouldn't be interested in this synthetic burger.
You gave the reason. You said they have to have at least half a brain.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You're talking about people who have a quarter or less.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't. For me, I'm not interested in trying one. And I understand that White Castle that has these, they call them sliders. These are like micro-sized burgers, and allegedly they're normally made out of meat. And we call them belly bombers in our house, because if you have one, you will have stomach eruptus pretty soon after you eat one. And a lot of people call them belly bombers here in Missouri. Well, the regular hamburgers used to be, I think, 49 cents. They might have gone up to 59 cents. They're a little more expensive than that in New York City. But if you want one of these synthetic, fake, looks like a hamburger, but is not a hamburger, one of these GMO, soy, whatever you want to call them, burgers with beet juice from White Castle, whatever they make them with, I'm not really sure of all the ingredients, it's $1.99. It's about 4 times as expensive to have one of these synthetic burgers as it is to have a real hamburger. I still don't get it. Dr. Shealy, and I'll be right back. So, Dr. Shealy, do you have concerns about these unburgers, these synthetic, as I'm calling them, hamburgers, these non-beef hamburgers? Do you have any concerns about?
I guess I would consider it slightly worse than the usual McDonald's burger. Now, my favorite statement is I went to McDonald's in 1962. I took one bite and spit it out.
Yes.
And I haven't been back.
Yes.
And I'm not going to even take a bite of this crap.
Yeah. And, okay, about McDonald's, there's a story about this woman who was in a wheelchair. And she went into McDonald's in, in Detroit. Detroit, Michigan. And so she was sitting in a wheelchair, and she was tired of waiting for her food. So she pulled out a taser and shot the employee behind the counter with a taser because she was tired of waiting for her food. This is kind of a strange story, but I don't think it's as uncommon as we might think. There are stories about people getting, asking for a hamburger that's a little different, and they get a regular hamburger with all the trimmings, but they want it without one of the trimmings, and then the customer goes ballistic, melts down, jumps over the counter, attacks the employee. Those kind of stories are getting more and more common. People are losing it. They're over the most. Dr. Shealy, I don't want to go out. There was a story at the top of at the news that we just heard about this cop who was holding his baby in a Costco, and he felt threatened by this handicapped person, and so he shot him right there. Really? So some cop can't deal with a handicapped person? He felt threatened, so he shoots him? This is the kind of stuff that's going on.
Well, it's getting crazier by the second, not by the day.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't want to go to places where most people go. I have to think very carefully about, going to the Chinese factory outlet. Do I really need it? No, I don't think so. I'm seeing more incompetence behind the counters. I'm seeing more incompetence by the employees. I'm seeing more rude customers. I happened to be in Springfield, and one of our neighbors asked me to pick up something at Sam's. So we, our son and my wife and I went into Sam's to pick up this item for our neighbor, and I decided to talk with the store manager and the store assistant manager, and so it was just the three of us. And I said, are customers getting worse? Are they getting more aggressive? Are they getting more anxious? Are they getting more me first? And the answer is yes. And all you have to do to prove that is just to try to cross the crosswalk at Sam's Club. Just try. And the cars, the SUVs, the pickup trucks, they're not going to wait for someone in a crosswalk, which is the polite thing to do, which is the standard thing to do. They will just push their way, and you better get out of their way, because either they don't see you, they're not paying attention to you, or they're me first, or all of the above. And I mentioned that, and they said, yeah, that's right. People leave their carts wherever they darn well feel like it. They don't care whether they're going to blow downhill in the wind and crash into somebody's car. They don't have to worry about that, because they're going to be gone, before that happens. People don't seem to care about anyone else.
Vince, you've already discussed how bad the millennials are, but where did the millennials come from? They are children of the baby boomers. So the beginning of the worst of humanity seemed to have been with the beginning of the baby boom generation, right?
Right. No question about it. I believe it's our fault. And when I say ours, I don't mean yours and I don't mean mine. I mean collectively the parents' fault for not paying attention to their children. I was talking with a gal who comes to the farm a lot, and she says she's trying to get her daughter to pay attention to the daughter's 3-year-old, and she can't seem to get her daughter to pay attention to her own daughter. So what she does is just, I guess, grabs her by the neck, drops her down in front of a TV, and says, "Be happy, leave me alone, don't bother me. I got to check my texts." Did you hear the story about this valedictorian of a high school class who decided to go off script? So what she did was she decided to thank all the people who were in her high school life that were significant, that were memorable. And when she went off script, she talked about the negligent counselor who was of no help, the people in the office who did not help her with getting internships, the people, the drunk teacher who showed up and the cops came to arrest him, while on duty in class. It was great. It was really great because this one valedictorian actually went way out on a limb, and there was nothing that the administration could do about it when she went off script and talked about how bad her high school was. Don't you love it? Don't you love it? Yeah. So, things are crazy. There was in Canada, a police chief hands out a $575 ticket to a driver who threw a lit cigarette out of the car. Now, throwing a lit cigarette out of the car is like dumb. Okay, it's littering is wrong, but $575 is wrong as well. So we're looking, and how does that make the people who drive and operate cars like the police? How much does it make them like them? Not too much, as far as I can tell. Dr. Shealy, before the Industrial Revolution, our bodies were a little different, and you're the expert on this. I'm not. But from what I've learned, our teeth were different because we had to rip flesh apart. Maybe we cooked it, maybe we ate it raw. But we didn't have extruded food before the Industrial Revolution. We didn't have Cheese Whiz, and we didn't have Velveeta, and we didn't have white bread in a bag that was just so soft. We actually had to chew it. And so our bite was different. Our jaw strength was different. Our jaw muscles were different. Well, now with cell phones, and I just can't believe how stupid people are, but with the cell phones, it's changing our skeleton. People spend so much time hunched over their screens that they now have bony spikes developing on their backs of their skulls. Are you warning your patients, or are you talking to your patients about their posture and how their posture is changing because of the cell phone stupidity, this craze?
Oh, yeah. Well, they're going to wind up with significant scoliosis.
And is that repairable? I mean, when they get this massive, serious curvature of the spine, can they just say, you know what, I'll just stand up straight? Or will they have damage?
It depends on whether they started it before puberty. If they started it before puberty, the chances are it's not going to be correctable. If they started it well after puberty, maybe.
Okay. It seems that this problem with these spikes on their spines is most common with people that are between 18 and 30 years old. But actually, it's right at the base of their skull. And I've seen images of X-rays, and it's almost like a little tail on the bottom of their skull, and because of this bending over. But I think that these cell phones are worse than just that. I think that we're experiencing the inability to think. We can't estimate. We can't seem to say, well, from here to there is about 10 miles, or 5 miles, or 2 miles, or 1 mile. Children don't know without looking at their phone. Dr. Shealy, do you see a way of pulling out of this for people to reverse this trend of not?
The other way I see is for somehow people to get rid of dumb phones totally. In other words, if you could start a mass movement to censor the entire dumb phone concept, that's the only way it'll ever stop. It'll just get worse.
Have you found in your own experiences that the things that I've been saying about young people not being able to estimate, not being able to figure things out on their own, not being intuitive, not being conscientious, not having a hobby, are you finding all this as well?
Oh, yeah. They have only one activity. I don't know whether you call it a hobby. It's one life purpose, and that's to ruin their brains with dumb phones. That's it.
And I'm wondering, do they actually even know that the use of these phones is damaging their eyes with the backlit LED screens that emit these?
They don't pay attention to things like that.
Okay. How about just the lenses of their eyes? Do you think that they will become more and more and more nearsighted as a result of just looking, I don't know, just inches away most of the time rather than looking where they're going?
Oh, yeah. I think they'll develop cataracts 20 years earlier, too.
Okay. So what are cataracts for those who have heard that word but aren't really sure?
Well, just behind the opening of the eye, the iris, the open part of the eye, is something called a lens. And if that lens is clear as crystal, but it gradually gets deposits in it, calcium of some kind or another, and gradually it becomes unable to see at all. You could go totally blind.
And is this degeneration a result, or is it accelerated by the use of blue lights like computer screens, television screens, and cell phones?
No question about it. Very much so. Blue light is not good light.
There's a new term that has just come out. It's called iPhone hand. This is the first word, iPhone, iPhone, and the second word is hand. And doctors are saying that they are seeing a surge in people blighted by pain and weakness in their hands because they don't use their thumbs enough.
Well, I would say that's what I call just dessert.
Well, I remember learning cursive writing. Before I do a broadcast, I write notes. I write them on a spiral-bound notebook, which I pay about between 17 and 25 cents for, and I buy them by the case at the Chinese factory outlet when they have the school sale. And I've got them stacked 4 feet tall from all the years I've been broadcasting. I literally handwrite my notes. Dr. Norm Shealy is with us, normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com. So, Dr. Shealy, doctors are now warning patients about smartphones, and they say it can lead to an epidemic of iPhone hands. And what's happening is people are not using their thumbs as much. You know, we used to have shovels and picks and hoes and trowels, and we used to write with pens and paper or pencils and paper. We're not doing that so much anymore. We're tapping with the tips of our fingers, and we're swiping with our fingers, and we're not using our thumbs. So what could happen is thumbs could be useless in the future. What are your thoughts about that, Dr. Shealy? Is that possible?
Of course.
That we could. Okay.
I mean, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Okay. And so what are we going to do without these stupid phones? I mean, if that's all we know how to do, what happens when the electricity goes away? For example, in South America, Uruguay, Paraguay, Argentina, 44 million people. 44 million people. That's more than 4 times the size of the city of New York. In South America, we're without electricity. So we're talking about all of a sudden, in multiple countries, the grid went down. Not just one country, not just one area, multiple countries, all simultaneous. Elevators stopped. Gas stations couldn't pump fuel. Food stores couldn't refrigerate the food. Freezers stopped working. Refrigerators stopped working. Water treatment plants stopped working. Sewage treatment plants stopped working. We've become a society that can't live without electricity. But 120 years ago, that was the norm. So if you went to South America 120 years ago, it would have been dark at night, just as it is or was when this massive grid down situation happened. But people aren't used to that. People are not used to not having their cell phones. They're not used to not having internet on demand or television on demand or communication on demand. We're not used to it. I don't think people can live without electricity. They melt down when their phone, when the battery in their cell phone gets down to 10% remaining charge. As I think about this, I think there are going to be a lot of people that are dead. A lot of people who depend on electricity and take it for granted. And why would they take it for granted? Because they don't know how things work. And when they don't know how things work, ignorance seems to be bliss. They don't understand that when they flush the toilet, somebody downhill has to deal with that. It just doesn't disappear. It just doesn't go into the abyss. Somebody has to deal with what they just flushed down the toilet, whether it be the guy that cleans out the septic system, whether it be the plumber who fixes the broken pipes that go to the septic system because the tree roots have damaged the pipes, or whether it be the water treatment facility that runs on electricity and chemicals. Somebody's got to deal with it at some time. But I think people just aren't paying attention. And I don't think they want to know. Well, here's another question, Dr. Shealy. In your practice, in your in the groups of people that you come in contact with, do you find that people just don't want to know? Don't tell me. Don't tell me. Don't tell me. I don't want to know. Are you experiencing that as well? Because I am.
Oh, yes.
I was working on a car yesterday, and it was a challenge. Every time I work on a car that someone else has worked on, it's been a challenge. And the reason I'm mentioning this is I'd like to ask you if you're finding the same thing in medicine. So, for example, I've never seen an oil filter or an oil change that was done completely properly. I've never seen anyone do that besides me. And I'm not bragging. They just don't know what they're doing. I've never seen pretty much anything that someone has done on a car that was done right. Yesterday I was working on a guy's car that I was helping out, and the wiring some device was added on, and the wiring was just stripped, and wires were twisted in place. They didn't use crimp connectors. They didn't use the proper taping. It was a poorly done job, but it was probably done 20 years ago on this old car. The point I'm trying to make is when you follow someone else's medical practice, someone else has worked on someone's body that has now become your patient, do you see a lack of, what would the word be? A lack of information. Have you seen where the previous practitioners did things that you have to fix, but it's tough to fix because you don't know all the things that the other guy did? Has that ever happened to you, Dr. Shealy?
Oh, very, 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 very common.
Can we talk about that when we come back after the top of the hour news? Because I know mechanics experience this. Like, why did that guy do that? It makes no sense at all. Why did that guy put this on this way? Why didn't he do it right? Why didn't he take the time to do it right? Why didn't he take the time to finish the job? Why did he leave it half-baked? Can we talk about some things that you've seen in your experience that we can prevent if we know what to look for before it happens? Dr. Shealy's with us, normshealy.com. And this is the USA Prepares. Everyone all set? Hour number 2 of the USA Prepares. Dr. Norman Shealy's with us, normshealy.com. Dr. Shealy, we're talking about some things that I've seen on automobiles. And I've noticed over the years that other mechanics don't do things the way I do. I think they take shortcuts. Let me give you an example. So when they change the oil, they don't necessarily tighten them enough so that they don't leak. They over-tighten them so you can't get them off the next time. They don't seem to care about the next guy who's going to change the oil. They're only caring about themselves. And when they put wheels on, they over-tighten the lug nuts and they don't lubricate them, so they tend to rust in place or oxidize in place, making it really hard for the car owner, if he or she has a flat tire, to change the tire with the tools that came with the car, because the lug nut tool is just not long enough to loosen over-tightened lug nuts. So the question is in your medical practice, are you seeing evidence that the guy before you didn't quite do it right?
Yes. Common. The average physician misses 50% of the diagnoses that I make. And it's because they didn't check. They didn't check their vibratory sensation in their feet. They didn't check their hemoglobin A1C. They didn't check their homocysteine. They didn't check their high sensitivity C-reactive protein. They didn't check, period.
Dr. Shealy, it's one thing to have an oil filter that leaks. It's one thing to have a spark plug wire that's not pushed on, and the engine misfires, but it still kind of runs. But it's another thing to mess up with the body. How is it possible? How is it possible that these medical professionals can miss so many things that you've just mentioned? How's that possible? Because they all work on an assembly line, and they are controlled by the pharmacomafia, and they lost all intellectual curiosity by the time they finished medical school, if not by the time they finished their residency. They became clones for the pharmacomafia. You said two things that are absolutely riveting to me. I wrote them down. They've lost their intellectual curiosity. Dr. Shealy, I know for a fact that you and I would go nuts if we didn't have our intellectual curiosity. Yep. Well, my favorite thing is they can't all be perfect like us, but they could try. Yeah. And the other thing that you said that I found fascinating was that they work on an assembly line. And that's something that I don't think you and I could do either. Oh, no. The idea of seeing a patient in 7 minutes, that all my life. With a new patient, I've taken unless it's in the emergency room, but for a new person in my office, I spend an hour. For a return visit, I have a half-hour period. I can't do it less than that. Nobody can do it well in less than that. Well, it's so interesting that you say that, because I was talking with a gal who came over to the farmhouse, and we were talking about oil changes. And she gets her oil changed at one of those Jiffy-type places, in and out in 15 minutes. And I said, I can't do that. I cannot change oil in a vehicle in 15 minutes. It's impossible. Impossible for me to do that because it doesn't even drain out that fast. So how could I get it up on the lift, pull out the drain plug, take out the oil filter, and then let it drain, because I let it drain for 2 hours or almost 2 hours, literally, at a minimum. Normally, when I change the oil, I like to pull in the vehicle when it's hot, meaning the engine has been thoroughly warmed up. It's been on a half-hour or more trip, comes in, goes right up on the lift. I pull out the oil filter, the drain plug, and then I let it sit for 2 hours, minimum. Or what I really like is overnight. And it's like, what's wrong with you? How come it takes you so long? Well, it takes that long to be that thorough, to check the ball joints, while it's up there draining. I check the ball joints. I check the rear end differential fluid, the front axle fluid, if it's a four-wheel drive, the tie rod ends, the wheel bearings. I check the belts, the hoses, the coolant, everything you can think of under the car and under the hood. And it takes not long. It literally does. And I don't like spilling the oil on the engine. I like making sure that I use the right viscosity, the right rated oil for that particular model, because they're not all the same. I check the coolant level and the coolant temperature protection and freezing protection. And all that takes that much time. So it's not like I can't do it. It's not like I can't do it really quickly. I could if I skipped all those steps, but I refuse to do that. And is that what you're saying, Dr. Shealy? You refuse to skip the steps so that you can have an accurate diagnosis? Well, of course. But, it just,
Well, common sense is the uncommon commodity, so what else can one say?
Okay, so when you go to these conventions, do you get a chance to meet doctors who brag about their assembly line? It's like, I see,
No.
Heck, I got it down to 3 minutes. I can see a patient every 3 minutes. Really?
Well, I guess I could see them by passing by.
So where's this going, Doc? Right. Well, heck, you and I can't even say hello in 3 minutes, Dr. Shealy.
Oh, well.
So where are we going with medicine? If this is the template of the 7-minute visit.
As I see it, we've gone down the tube already. Vince, 2 weeks ago, tomorrow,
yeah,
one of my staff had a problem that was related to work. So she called workers' comp. They sent her to a walk-in clinic in Bolivar. She walked in. The guy didn't touch her, didn't examine her, and said, "You need to see an orthopedist." I called the workers' comp office back and said, "That's malpractice. How can you refer somebody to orthopedist if you haven't even examined them?" And so they made an appointment to see the orthopedist, and she's going to do that the 20th of this month. Meanwhile, I at least have given her some electrical stimulation to take care of her pain, but because it's a workers' comp thing, I can't take care of her. It's the sloppiest bull blank I've ever seen.
Well, I've seen people misdiagnosed. I know a guy who was septic, and I said, I think you have sepsis. You need to go to the emergency room right now. And they thought, well, no, it's not that. And then finally, there was a young doctor who said, this person has sepsis, and we got to treat him immediately. So, the first team missed the whole thing. They just thought he was congested. Unbelievable. Dr. Shealy, can you tell us what is sepsis?
Well, sepsis is an infection. And, of course, there are hundreds of organisms, bacteria, rickettsia, viruses, all kinds of things that can infect you. But in general, sepsis means that even in the bloodstream.
Yeah. And what is a common treatment for someone who has sepsis?
Antibiotics, often intravenously.
And that's exactly what they did for this person. But they got it wrong. And I just, and when I hear about these walk-in clinics, generally speaking, I am not impressed with the results, because they seem to think that people who are really sick aren't sick. They just have, just treat it with something that relieves the symptoms rather than getting down to the cure. Seems to be what they do. There's a small group of people in Colorado, and this made the mainstream news. And, let me preface this by saying, in radio, and I'm not talking about the kind of radio we're doing, I'm talking about like over-the-air radio. If you have a radio receiver, which we could call that a table radio, whether it be an AM or an FM or an AM-FM radio, or whether it be a car radio, there is a feedback loop. And so some of the signal that's received gets looped back in through the circuitry of the radio, and that's just the way it works. Well, this small group of people in Colorado think that a feedback loop for the body is a good thing. So what they're doing is they are recommending drinking one's own urine. And this group is called the Urine Therapy of Colorado. Urine Therapy of Colorado, and they host these meetings and gatherings in the public library in Boulder, Colorado, to discuss and explore and learn and support others drinking urine as or using it as a topical treatment. Have you heard of such a thing, Dr. Shealy?
Indeed. About 20 years ago, I went to a meeting, and there was a beautiful, physical face, beautiful young lady, and she and I had a horrible argument right before 50 or 60 other people about the fact that under no circumstance would I drink urine, mine or anyone else's.
Yeah.
It, to me,
well,
that's insanity, but it's only part of insanity.
Okay. So some people soak their body parts in urine, and they think that it helps with skin diseases like eczema or skin maladies. So this one guy was in this article. It's called it's CBSLocal.com, and it says this group says drinking your own pee is good for you. And all right, so your medical advice, Dr. Shealy, is what?
I think it's slightly worse than fake burgers.
Okay. Here's another thing that I'm very concerned about. We talked this morning early in this broadcast class about what millennials are doing. And it seems that the deaths resulting from despair have now hit a record high. So this is during the good times when you can still go to the supermarket, you can still turn on your smartphone, you still have connectivity, you can still watch Netflix, the traffic lights are working, the water flows out of the tap, the toilet's flush, things are pretty good. But the rate of suicide in the United States is at the highest that it's ever been. We talk about that when we come back with Dr. Norm Shealy. Class, Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. Dr. Shealy, for someone to get in touch with you at your office in Springfield, Missouri, at your clinic, what number would you like them to call?
417-351-5221.
Class, that's 417-351-5221. 417-351-5221 for Dr. Norman Shealy's clinic in Springfield, Missouri. Dr. Shealy, so the suicide rate is the highest that it's ever been here in the United States, and the same can be said about death rates from drug overdoses and alcohol. So these rates are an all-time high. And you've been working with addiction to cure addiction, to treat addiction with your inventions, your post-electromagnetic therapy devices. And why are we seeing people?
Well, that is also
themselves? What?
A problem of the medical profession being pawns for the pharmacomafia. You know, interestingly, just within the last week, the company, one of the biggest narcotic drug companies, went bankrupt after they pleaded guilty and were fined $225 million for fraud.
For opioid manufacturing?
Yes.
Uh-huh. And so, how does that happen, Dr. Shealy? Do pimps for the pharmacomafia go out and con doctors and medical professionals into thinking that these are the be-all, end-all cures, and then
exactly.
Those doctors
they pay
prescribe?
Them, they pay them to prescribe extras and that kind of thing. They actually plead guilty to that. Total fraud.
And so how is your practice different from that, Dr. Shealy? Rather than prescribing these narcotics, what do you do differently, and why?
Well, I'm not opposed to occasional narcotics in acute illness. I'm totally opposed to a chronic illness. And interestingly, I actually gave up my narcotic license in the late 90s because I'm not willing to be bothered with it. So Sergey keeps his, and in urgent situations he may be able to do it, but I don't want to be able to. I use electricity, safe, simple alternatives. Works infinitely better.
When someone is on narcotics, Dr. Shealy, how does that affect their digestive system?
Well, that's almost minor. Obviously, it interferes with every cell and every organ in the body, but it interferes with your brain bucket more than anything. You lose your ability to reason, to think straight, etc.
Do you think a lot of crime is related directly to the addiction to drugs, that people just absolutely have to do it and they're willing to rob, steal, whatever they have to do to get the money to get the drugs? Do you think that there's a direct relation there?
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
I read that 1 out of every 6 Americans is taking psychiatric drugs right now, and that this is there's never been a worse drug crisis in the history of America, and that people are killing themselves in record numbers. Does that?
And there's not a single mood drug that's good for anything except killing you.
Okay, so if someone's depressed, Dr. Shealy, what do you recommend that person do?
Well,
because there's despair
stimulation. That's the beautiful, the LISS, L-I-S-S, clean electrical stimulator is one approach. Our gamma PEMF is another. And, of course, you can retrain the brain with autogenic training and related things like that. And, of course, you can also take some extra tryptophan and lithium and B-complex to help make your serotonin the anti-depression normal neurochemical.
Okay. We're going into a break. When we come back, would you tell us about the lithium and how much to take in the other supplements, exactly how much to take every day based on what weight? Dr. Shealy will be right back. So we're talking about depression. And according to what I've learned, that the West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania are the states that have the highest drug overdose deaths in the country. And West Virginia has the highest. West Virginia. And Dr. Shealy, so we're talking about depression. You mentioned lithium and some other supplements. Can you say that again so that our class can figure out if they've got someone in their family, how can they safely try to reduce that depression, and what dosages and of what supplements?
Well, obviously, I think it's best done under a smart physician. However, the normal, what I call bright-eyed, bushy-tail wake-up hormone, serotonin, is deficient in virtually 100% of people with depression. And it is made in your body if you've got adequate tryptophan, the amino acid L-tryptophan. And I've given people 5,000 to 7,000 milligrams of that in the morning with a minimum of 25 milligrams of all the basic B complexes and with usually 20 milligrams of lithium orotate, O-R-O-T-A-T-E. That is the foundation for making adequate serotonin. Now, it may take 1 to several days to be effective, but it often is infinitely better than any antidepressant drug. There's not any evidence that antidepressant drugs cure depression. Now, some of them will take you from severe depression to moderate depression. Halitosis is better than no breath at all, maybe, but it's not good. And so I don't like any antidepressant drug or any anti-anxiety drug or any other mood drug. They all suck, and I'm being kind because I'm on the radio.
Okay, and what about your PEMF device? Will it work? Will that work with depression?
Oh, yes. In many people. Nothing works in 100% of people, let's face it. However, I would say conservatively, 80% of people with depression get a remarkably good result with the gamma PEMF.
Okay, and is that the one I have?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Okay, and so will it work with? Are there any risks for? Well, let's say someone has diabetes.
Oh no, it's good for diabetes, especially if you use it on the abdomen. It helps the pancreas work better.
Okay. How about if a person is overweight? Are there any risks?
In fact, I've got a study going on right now treating people by having them wear it at night on the belly to lose weight. That's how safe it is.
Okay.
The contraindication.
What if they're anemic? Okay.
Oh, excellent.
Yes.
The contraindication is a pacemaker, or I wouldn't use it in someone who's pregnant, just on general principles. But I don't know of any other risks.
All right, so that means anemia, drug addiction, ADHD, alcoholism, seizures, heart problems, diabetes, all that.
Good.
Okay. All right, and so where would you start? If someone wants to buy one of these from your website or call you and talk about it at your clinic at 417-351-5221, Dr. Shealy, where would a person typically start placing this
Well,
coil,
they can have a Skype or telephone consultation with me to help guide them through this. We do a lot of those, even in Europe. But I'm a little bit leery of saying that people on their own might just get this without talking to someone who knows what they're doing.
Okay. So in order to make sure that they get this right, you would like them to call your office, 417-351-5221, get the consultation before ordering it. Is that correct?
Yes. I really believe that's safer and more effective.
And as a result of this telephone conversation, what will they learn from you? And how long of a conversation will that be, Dr. Shealy?
Well, it could be anywhere 30 minutes to an hour. I mean, it's the same on the phone as it's in my office. I want adequate time.
Okay. And then when they're done, will they have, if they've had a pen in hand, will they have complete notes as to what to do, the frequency to do it, when to expect results, and all that?
Yes, but I also actually send them an email with an outline of my recommendations.
There you go. Okay. Wonderful. Dr. Shealy, there's something else going on that's very concerning to me, and that is that this made the major news that dementia death toll has doubled in 1 decade. So now they're saying that 1 out of every 4 people over 75 years old now die with dementia. I didn't realize it was...
It's the same business of the poisoning of the world. Let's face it, the incidence of dementia is markedly increased by fluoride. It is increased by Monsanto's junk. It is increased by all kinds of poisons. It is increased by the food mafia. 80% of the food that's sold in this country is junk. It's not even real food. It's as bad as steak burgers.
Mm-hmm. Well, my understanding is there is no cure for dementia. Is that correct?
Well, I have reversed early dementia. Now, I don't want it after they, gotten bad. But if I can work with them when they first begin to get lost and, lose their memory, just putting them on certain supplements and good nutrition can often reverse the process. I mean, my first cure of this was back in the mid-'70s. A woman who couldn't be left alone at any time because she'd wander out of the house and get lost. And she came back to normal within 3 months.
What did you do?
It's got to be early.
What did you do for her, if you can share that?
Well, I put her on 50 milligrams of vitamin B complex a day, a couple of grams of vitamin C. In those days, it was probably the best form of vitamin A, which actually I now think is astaxanthine, and some vitamin E, which I also would now use tocotrienols. Those alone are adequate to bring many people out of early memory loss.
Mm-hmm. Well, what we're learning now is that it's pretty serious. A lot of people have it. 1 out of 4 is going to die from it. But isn't that what we used to call hardening of the arteries? Is that what it used to be called, Dr. Shealy?
Well, of course, but there are many, many, many causes, and the number one cause is nutritional deficiency. And the number 2 cause is poison.
Okay, well, here it is. Okay, there's now a mainstream media article that says, quote, fast food could cause dementia, and the damage is irreversible, scientists claim. And that's on thesun.co.uk. It goes on to say that it's no secret that fast food is not the best for our waistline, but scientists claim that it could cause dementia. So what we're talking about is eating that, I don't even know how they can call it food, fast calories maybe is what it should be called. So some scientists found that there seemed to be some links between unhealthy eating habits and the lack of exercise for sustained periods of time that put people at the risk of developing type 2 diabetes, declines in brain function, which is dementia, and brain shrinkage. And I guess should we combine that with smartphones and just make it the trifecta? Lack of exercise, bad diet, and smartphones?
People who sit all day have the same risk of early death as someone who smokes a package of cigarettes a day.
I'm trying to think of a job today, Dr. Shealy, other than, like nurses race around and doctors race around, in hospitals. But for the average bear, I'm thinking people make appointments for other people and they sit on their butts all day long. There are people working in retail that don't, but so many people make appointments for other people by sitting at computers at desks that's what they do. And then I guess when they get home, they sit and watch TV, and then when they go shopping, they sit in one of those electric carts to push them around.
Yep. That's what I call the couch potato syndrome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you've said, as long as I've known you, Dr. Shealy, if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. So that means if you don't use your thumbs, we talked about that today, you're going to lose that ability. Is there a difference mentally with, and I'm back to writing my book and jotting down my notes every day as I think of these things, and it's just a collection of paragraphs of how I do things. Nothing more than 1,000 or more paragraphs on each topic of the way I do things. When I write my notes for my book, I literally take a pen or a pencil, whatever I have right then and there, and I jot my notes down on paper. Is there a difference in the mind between writing, forming those letters with our fingers and our hands on a piece of paper versus typing on a keyboard? So, for example, am I more deliberate with either a key, because I could do both, or either? Am I more deliberate with a pen and pencil and paper, or with a keyboard and a screen? Does that activity change the way the brain works, whether I use a keyboard or a pen?
Well, I would say yes. On the other hand, the thing that's worst of all is texting with a phone, because you don't even use all the fingers. At least with a keyboard, you use all the fingers.
Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering if I'm more deliberate and more accurate writing with a pencil or a pen and paper than I would be. And I'm not using it. And how do you write, Dr. Shealy? When you write your books, what do you do?
Now, actually, I do type them. I type them on a word processor.
Okay. All right. Well, my plan was to do both. First, write out my notes, and second, then type them in, myself. That was my plan. Okay, so if we don't exercise, we're going to lose it. And what about eating? What about chewing? What about if we slam down a burger at a fast food joint, with hardly chewing it, how does that affect our digestive system? Are we going to lose that too? Can you tell us more about that when we come back?
Part of the digestion begins in the mouth.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about that when we come back with Dr. Shealy. Dr. Shealy, you were saying that the digestive process starts in the mouth. So if we rush through a meal, I don't even know if it's a meal anymore, but I remember back in the 50s and 60s that we used to have meals as a family. We'd have breakfast, lunch, and dinner as a family, and we'd have a salad. I mean, it was actually a meal. Now people go to the fast food joints and they slam it down. They want bigger and they want to slam it down. Are they, in the use it or lose it world, are they losing their digestive system by slamming it down?
Oh, absolutely. There used to be an old saying, you're supposed to chew every bite 30 times before you swallow. In other words, crunch the food as small as possible. That mixes the saliva, the enzymes in your mouth. It helps you make nitric oxide. It's got all kinds of benefits.
Mm-hmm. So a slow meal is actually a good thing, kind of like a slow oil change is a good thing as compared to the jiffy oil change.
It's sort of like real breathing. It's essential.
Okay. There was an incident at a Starbucks. I have never been to a Starbucks, although I did taste a Starbucks coffee one time when one of our regulars at the meetup walked in with a Starbucks cup of coffee because he heard me say I never had one, and I didn't plan on going into a Starbucks to buy an overpriced cup of beverage that they called coffee. So he handed me one, so I couldn't say I've never had one. Well, there was this pregnant woman. Yeah. And by the way, I didn't think it was ever that good. I would certainly not buy one. So there was this pregnant woman who went into a Starbucks for a cup of coffee in Europe. And she ordered a coffee that had caffeine in it. And the 30-something-year-old guy behind the counter suggested, recommended that she maybe have a decaf. And so the pregnant woman objected to that and said no. Now, of course, I'm paraphrasing the whole thing. So the guy behind the counter thought, well, look, you're pregnant and it'd be good for the baby if you didn't have the caffeine. And it escalated into a social media kind of a frenzy where people said, who does that guy think he is telling this woman what to do? Dr. Shealy, what are your thoughts about caffeine and pregnancy? And is it okay to drink coffee when you're pregnant?
Well, I think 1 or 2 cups of coffee, if you're accustomed to it already, would be fine. Mm-hmm. Fasting, I think, never should be started if you're not accustomed to doing it all your life almost already. I definitely would not do it when I'm pregnant. Pregnancy is a very, very infinitely small, tedious thing that needs to be carefully done.
So are you saying that if a person is pregnant, they should not drink coffee, or they should not wean off coffee?
Before they became pregnant. If they were drinking before they became pregnant, I think it's okay. 1 or 2 cups a day. But now 4 or 5 cups, no.
Okay. When a woman is pregnant, Dr. Shealy, what what should she have done before, during, and after pregnancy? So what I'm saying is, let's say a year or more before the intentional conception, during pregnancy, and assuming breastfeeding a year after. What should the mother-to-be and the mother actually do that you think would be beneficial?
Well, interestingly, the greatest compliment my daughter ever paid me was when she and her husband were getting ready to have wanting to have a child. They came to me and asked me for advice, just as you just said. And my advice is pretty much the same as it is every day of the year. First of all, get 7 or 8 hours of sleep every night. Secondly, eat 3 meals of real food every day. Take your regular supplements, or during pregnancy, at least the prenatal vitamins, etc. And exercise moderately. Everybody, every day of the year, 30 minutes, 5 days a week, minimum of some kind of physical movement is essential for health. And, of course, don't eat junk. Eat real food, including 5 or more servings of fruits and vegetables every day. And be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line,
Dr. Shealy, I got to tell you that I don't believe most people do that. I'm not saying it's not good advice, because I do what you've recommended, but I don't think most people do.
Well, in fact, only 2.7% of people do. 97.3% of individuals have sloppy habits.
You know, I long for the days and I miss the days that I would go to Mrs. Finelli's mom and dad's house, and they had a meal. They had it all. Salad. I mean, it was all there. All the colors were there on the plates. It was fabulous. But it took effort. Her mom really worked at it.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful. But I don't think we do that anymore. Dr. Shealy, thanks so much for being with us.